Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of business experts to talk about the national newspapers, find out about their local businesses and their business sector, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. I've got a fantastic panel of guests. Let me introduce you to David Owen, the Chief Executive of GFirst LEP. He's now moved over to Gloucestershire County Council 4 days a week, and hopefully he'll be filling us about that later on. We've got Will Abbott, partner, chartered accountant, business growth advisor for Randall Payne, Angharad Wrigley, from founder and owner of Hot Tubs Rocks. She wears lots of hats across the forest of Deans, a serial entrepreneur. And finally, last not least, we've got Colin Frensham, founder and owner of Tidal Training, celebrating 10 years in business. And he's ex-military like myself, and he's actually running one of the fastest growing training companies in the UK. Welcome, all of you. Let's just quickly go over to the national newspapers, courtesy of the Daily Mail, sorry, the BBC. Right, let's go. The Times. Hwatang I warn trust over her radical reforms. The unions battle government in new winter of discontents. The Guardian calls for action as teachers real scale of pupil hunger. The Daily Express, tragedy for families and care cost cap is delayed. The Daily Mail, what is the point of these police? The Mirror, heroes denied truth. The Metro, BGT judges vile insults, belittle Britain. The Daily Telegraph, use G20 talks to give peace a chance, US tells Ukraine. The Financial Times, I'm going to ignore the story at the top there, but move further down. Must call time forever with ban on Twitter, working from home. Links to a story that appears in the other papers. And finally, the Daily Star, psycho seagull kick my head in. Let's be honest, if you live in Gloucester, that happens on a regular basis. It's no big headline. I'm going to start with you, Dave, but before I do, I just want to thank our sponsors, Hayswood Business Accountants and Advisors, lovely, lovely people who make great coffee. Anyway, let's move over to you, Dave. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Well, I was most interested in the seagull story, really. No, I wasn't. I think I'm really interested in the Elon Musk story. So Elon Musk paid, was it £38 billion in the end, or billion pound, wasn't it, in the end, for Twitter? And he's gone in there, he's got rid of most of the senior management team in his first couple of weeks in charge. He's changing all of the guidance on privacy of Twitter. He's decided that actually no one gets a lifetime ban from Twitter, which means that people like Donald Trump could come back in at some stage in the near future. And yesterday, in his first email to all the staff at Twitter, he wrote to them and said, working at home is now banned. You've got to be in the office for at least 40 hours a week, he said to them. And it strikes me that this guy is on something of an ego mission with Twitter, isn't he? He's bad enough with Tesla and all the SpaceX and rocket stuff, but to go into a business and say, actually, we're going to operate differently to how every other business is now operating in the tech sector in particular, in the part of the world they're in, and you've got to be in the office 40 hours a week, seems a little bit naive to me. I think Twitter employees will probably go and find themselves jobs elsewhere if they enjoy sometimes working at home. And it's been a bugbear of mine for some time now, this notion that here we all are sat at home being very unproductive, very clearly, aren't we? Because we can't possibly work hard if we're not in the office. That notion of presenteeism and having to appear in the office, otherwise you're not doing any work, is so outdated, it's unbelievable. And I hope Elon Musk gets his comeuppance a little bit for treating all of those staff in the way that he is treating them. The other big story today, though, Mark, which isn't in the papers because it came in late, was that recession does now loom for the UK, I think is the headline on the BBC website. We've been hearing about this for a couple of weeks now. Bank of England came out a week before last and said that we were probably already in recession and it was going to be the longest recession on record in the UK. But thankfully not as deep as other recessions, but predicted at the moment to run right through 2023 and into 2024. So there are really tough times ahead for businesses. We hear lots, rightly so, about the cost of living for individuals and for consumers, but there's some really, really tough times ahead for businesses on the back of that as well. And on the back of inflation and increasing costs. 2023 is going to be a really tricky year.
I think so. I totally agree. If you're in the hospitality trade, retail, it's going to be difficult. I've been out and about, as you know, delivering my magazines, and in the service sector and manufacturing, it's still really, really going quite strong. This is the feedback I'm getting. But retail, hospitality, the alarm bells are starting to ring as we go. So, no, thanks for that. I just want to bring a story that I got from the Daily Mail, actually, was the rise in working from home. Staff signed off sick with back and neck pain. And it's funny, actually, my wife brought this up a couple of years ago when it first got into lockdown. She said, I bet you there's going to be lots of court cases about that kind of stuff. So duty of care to our employees as well. Thanks ever so much for that, David. Let's move over to you, Will. Thanks for joining us, Will, today. What have you picked out from the papers, please, sir?
Well, you know, one of my favourite subjects, Mark, and I keep reminding you that I'm also chair of the governors at Gloucestershire College, and we do skills and education. Excuse me. And the shortage of people. So David's talking about looming recession. What we're all seeing, actually, with all of the businesses I'm working with, there's no shortage of work, but there is a shortage of workers, if you like. So an interesting couple of stories. I think it was Lord Taylor, is it, chair of Next, saying, actually, this isn't the Brexit I voted for. Can we have more immigration, please? Going on to say, actually, perhaps there should be a 10% additional tax charge on migrant workers. And I'm sat there trying to work out how that complies with discrimination legislation, but let's put that to one side. Another article in the Times, illness post-pandemic has taken 500,000 people out of the workforce. So ONS statistics out today showing that, say, 500,000 more people with long-term illness now no longer in the workforce, which I guess is a third of that 1.5 million of vacancies that we've got. I happened to be in conversation with the police constable yesterday, nothing that I've done untoward, but he was talking about they were looking at an alternative route into the police force that doesn't require all officers to have a degree. So again, I think that's interesting in terms of workforce flexibility. We need some more of the traditional routes that we used to have. And although I went to university and got a degree, and I think it's a great route for some people, I don't think it's the right route for everybody, which again, you know, working with the college where we do lots and lots of apprenticeships and higher level education, I think that they're fantastic routes into employment. Not everybody needs to get a degree at the end of the day. So a bit more flexibility around those kind of things, I think, will help. Final story, an obituary, I think just worth a mention. Lord Jones of Cheltenham was the first Liberal Democrat MP for Cheltenham, who passed away recently. So I thought that was just worth a mention. Obviously, that's in the days when back in 1992, when the Liberal Democrats were really becoming a force. First time I think Cheltenham didn't elect a Conservative MP. So just note that one.
Okay, well, thanks very much. And there was a story I thought I'd link back to you as well, was VAT hike for small businesses. Thousands of small businesses may pay VAT under Jeremy Hunt because he's not going to threshold companies must start paying the levy at 85,000 turnover rather than rising with inflation. So it's a bigger cost for smaller companies coming down the tracks as well. But I'm sure we can touch on lots more when we come to your bit, Will. Thanks ever so much for that. And Angharad, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talk today. Great to see you on the show. What have you picked out for us, please? Good morning.
Well, I have to say, it's the first time I think I've ever bought a newspaper, just to put that out there. Not the biggest fan. So when you invited me on, it was quite interesting. So kind of got lost in it and was determined to find something positive. I struggled, got to be honest. They don't make for the most pleasant reading at the moment, do they? And I think ignorance is probably bliss, which is why I don't tend to read them so much. But I did find a great spread in the Daily Mail about high achieving women and where they went to school, which I thought they referenced it as the Old Girls Club, which I thought was quite novel, really, the Old Girls Network, and wanted to mention it because Cheltenham Ladies College has got a little piece in there as well, where there are 4 ladies of note that they think are worth mentioning. There's more pictures than there is text, if I'm honest about it. I'm not quite sure they could find enough to say, but I just thought that was definitely worth pointing out because it was probably the only piece of positivity in the Daily Mail, marked with my lovely post-its. I've been very organised this morning.
Very impressive.
Of that, yeah. And then I went for I, and that's slightly more positive, although I found an interesting story about estate agents. I'm currently viewing quite a few properties at the moment, and it's not something I've come across. There is a claim that more and more estate agents are illegally coercing people who are looking to buy properties into using their mortgage brokers and their advisors and refusing to put offers forward to vendors if they don't use their own people, because they don't make money off of other brokers and, you know, associated mortgage people. So I thought that was fascinating. It didn't even occur to me that there was this sort of dark underbelly of estate agents, you know, coercing people into things they don't want to do, and therefore maybe getting worse rates or not getting offers put forward on the table. Fascinated me. Didn't know it was a thing.
I just want to say there are no estate agents on the panel today to defend that, but no, hey, look, business people are always trying to find a way to make more money.
Well, you know, and that's what it comes back to, isn't it? Really, that they feel the need to do that is the, you know, the bigger issue in reading that piece. It's not, I mean, yes, it's not great that they're doing it, but the fact that they clearly now, you know, is it post-COVID? You know, we've got our housing prices potentially dipping, the market's, you know, getting a little bit slower. That they feel the need to do something to actually increase their levels of income, because, well, like you're talking about, you know, VAT, and it's pretty miserable out there for a small business owner. I've got to be honest. At the moment, there's not that many extra ways of bringing money in, and obviously they found one. So they found a little sort of, you know, way of keeping it in house.
Okay. Well, thanks ever so much for those stories. So I'm going to go with Colin now. Colin, welcome to Punchline Talks, first time on the show as well. What have you picked out for us from the papers, please?
Thank you, Mark. Well, just like Angharad, I found it very, very difficult to find any good news in the papers. I went for the Daily Mail as well. You can't see that, but there is an interesting story. It is Armistice Day, and you know, back in the First World War, obviously we had the military, and they were doing a very, very important task. The government now, or well, there's concerns over plans for the military to fill in for striking border force staff. So what they've said is that, you know, normally border force staff are given 3 weeks training as a minimum before they interact with the public. I don't know if a lot of people have come in contact with squaddies, but you don't really want a lot of them interacting with the public. They have 16 weeks training to become soldiers, not to become border force. You know, and
they're not great. Not being funny. Squaddies and soldiers, I know, they're not great at communicating with the general public.
With civilians,
because they're trained to kill people, you know, and protect the country. Let's be honest. So when they put into, I mean, they did do a fantastic job during the pandemic, mind you.
They did indeed, yeah. And you know, if we're planning to use the military as border force, and also in another paper as well, they're looking to use the military for answering 999 calls as well. So we've got the NHS who are going on strike, we've got border force who are going on strike, and the military seem to be the fourth emergency service, which I don't think that's what the plan was, certainly. And you know, we've got senior officials in the military really pushing back on this, because we need to be thinking about national security. We need to be thinking about what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. A lot of military are on exercises. They're training. They're you know, they're honing their skills should they be required. And I don't think having them on the border and answering 999 calls is the answer. So someone needs to sort that out.
But I'll tell you one thing, looking at the papers, Colin, and all of us here very quickly, I can remember the winter of discontent. There seems to be a real big movement, doesn't there, for strike action. You've got the NHS, you've got teachers,
yeah,
you know, you've got you know, the police, thankfully not so, but it's looking really, really bad.
I don't think the rest of us are old enough, Mark, to remember that far back. But I think it's a sign of where we are, isn't it? Particularly with inflation and cost of living going up. You know, people are really feeling the pinch in their pockets, and so they're looking at ways in which they, you know, what can you do? You can only cut down your spending so far, particularly if you're on a low wage. So you've got to ask for more money from somewhere, haven't you? And I think that's how we've got to where we are. A long time of underinvestment in some of those services and individuals.
But David, it works if you're in the public sector, then you could go to the government for more money. But if you're like us, we run our own companies. You can't keep putting your prices up and keep putting your prices up, because in the end, people won't pay it. It's quite simple as that. It's this fine line, isn't it? I mean, I don't know where it goes. Sorry, Colin. Have you picked out one other story for us before we?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and interesting. It's not that people won't pay it; people can't pay, Mark. If the money's not there, it's not there. Another story that I picked out. Sorry, I'm a bit of a mood hoover this morning, but so is the news. Just Stop Oil on the M25. Now, this actually directly impacted me whilst I was sitting in Cheltenham as a business owner. And we've got trainers around the country. They're out, they're on the road, they're delivering training. And some of the courses that we deliver, the mental health courses, these courses are essential for staff who support individuals who may be coming out from the NHS into supported living or into an environment that's going to keep them safe because there may be elements of self-harm, etc. So he's drove from Rugby down to London to train support workers in an organisation where they support young adults who are at risk from themselves, and without the training, the clients, the individuals who they're supporting, cannot come out of the NHS and go into these secure settings. So the staff didn't get the training because our trainer was held up on the M25. That then has a knock-on effect, because now that young individual could not be released from the hospital to go in to the supported living environment. Financially, it affected me. I still have to pay the trainer. I've paid the mileage. I had to put them up in a hotel the night before. So, the knock-on effect from this Just Stop Oil is there's wider ramifications. It's not just people getting stopped on the M25, but I'm sitting in Cheltenham and now that's cost me financially. So what do we do about it? Well, if you turn to page 6 on the Daily Mail, we've got the Scotland Yard Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, saying that we can't use snipers to shoot people down from the gantries. And then we've got a Chief Constable saying, do we need more powers to Just Stop Oil? His answer is no. What's the answer?
The story that got me about this whole thing was how these journalists, I know you read that, the journalists were arrested for covering the story, which and photographers were arrested as well for covering the stories. Not the people up the bloody gantry, but the actual journalists trying to cover the story. Thanks ever so much for that, Colin. We're going to go back over to David, if that's okay, and find out about your secondment, David. So you obviously, the Chief Executive of GFirst LEP. It's been on the cards for a while, this, hasn't it? GFirst is kind of, the government wants to, bring the money back in, local government as well. Can you just tell us about where GFirst is at the moment and then your new role?
So it's business as usual for GFirst. The difference is that I'm spending less time in the organisation, having been seconded out. And so there was a white paper came out from government beginning of this year, which talked about devolution to regions of powers from London, which has to be a really good thing. It was the levelling up white paper with those 12 missions for what government sees as the real challenges for the UK and the opportunities. And within that paper, it talks about local enterprise partnerships continuing to be the independent business voice for areas and continuing until such a point as a devolution deal is done in that area, at which point they'll get shifted into, I think they describe them as local democratic structures. So for us in Gloucestershire, that's the county council looking to do a county deal for Gloucestershire to get more powers from government so that there's more direct control within Gloucestershire of those big services that deliver huge amount of value for the county. And so that's probably a couple of years away. We wanted to get ahead of the game, so seconding me to be Director of Economy and Environment into the County Council for 75 to 80% of my time, given that what I've got in GFirst is a really excellent senior leadership team that work with me. So Dev, Sarah and Patrick, who are really great, means that the LEP is directly involved in what does a county deal look like for Gloucestershire. It means that we're partnering with one of our key partners in the county much more closely than we have done previously, and we've been working really closely with all of our local authorities for, well, ever since we existed. And it means that there's sustainability for the LEP. So the important message is LEP is continuing business as usual, continuing to deliver the programmes that we've always delivered, carrying on delivering the Growth Hub, carry on delivering the end of our capital programme, because that's coming to an end now, carry on delivering schemes like Made in Gloucestershire and other things, which I know you've been really supportive of, Mark, in Punchline. And carrying on doing a fantastic job. When you've got a really good team of people, as I have in the LEP, the decision then to say, actually, there's a strategic challenge that we can address by seconding me out of the organisation for some of my time, but still with me keeping that overall oversight of the LEP, then it becomes a no-brainer, because I've got really great people in the LEP that can pick up the mantle where I left off.
Okay, no, thanks ever so much for explaining that, because a lot of people are worried. A lot of the business community, are back in the LEP. We're very fortunate here in Gloucestershire that, we all work together. A lot of other counties, we all know, don't have the same LEP that we've been fortunate to have, and your leadership there have not been a brown nose or anything, Dave, but you have done a great job, as have the hub and all the organisations. So I'm glad you're still hanging around, mate.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Thank you for that, Mark. I think the important thing as well is the white paper says there should continue to be an independent business voice that LEPs, or effectively what comes out of LEPs, will continue to lead on. Quite how that works is not clear yet, but it's absolutely there in the white paper that independent business voice needs to be there, it needs to have teeth, and it needs to be having a say in what's going on in economic growth in the county.
And it needs to be independent, because it's not being funny, otherwise the county council are political, and they'll make political decisions, short-term political decisions, rather than long-term economic decisions, because of various parties and stuff. So I think it's really important that the business community is still involved. That's my own personal opinion on that. So thanks ever so much for that, Dave. Let's go over to you, Will. We had a little chat the other day, and about your sort of role, what you're doing now, and the business advice that you're giving people. Can you explain about that, please?
I can do, yeah, for sure. But just before I do that, I want to pick up a theme that David mentioned. And I think, again, in my role with the college, you see that colleges work with a large number of local authorities. We do work in the Forest of Dean with the new campus there. We're like, anchor tenant on the Keys development I was chatting to Paul James about recently. The LEP's investment into the cyber centre over in Cheltenham. So, I think picking up that theme about Elon Musk, there aren't any egos and personalities, are there? I mean, there are, right? But actually, people put those things aside and just work together to get stuff done in Gloucestershire. It's amazing to see it, actually. And as I said, because of my involvement with the college, I see it in so many different ways. And even further afield with things like Business West and the local skills improvement plan and that kind of stuff that's going on. It's just we're very fortunate in the county to have this drive and energy, and actually just people collaborating and working together.
No,
in terms of what I'm doing, yeah, so pressure, right? So, I mean, I talked about workers stuff. So we are seeing, I think, some recession. I'm not going to say it. No, I managed to stop myself saying the R word. I refuse to say it. But certainly we are seeing more clients reaching out for help. I mean, I tend to work with clients. We meet every month at least. We run my boot camps, which are quarterly workshops just to get small business people together. Should say small business owners rather than short business people, but you know what I mean. In a room just to share what they're doing and what the challenges that they're facing. So we are perhaps not surprisingly see more people reaching out. As I've already said, the common theme at the moment seems to be there's loads of work, we need more workers. So the government's encouraging us to invest, try and improve productivity, etc. But I think again that becomes hard, when there's so much uncertainty and change, when we're not sure who the Prime Minister is this week and what the policies are going to be next week. People will just sit on their hands, in my view. So you start sitting on I won't spend the money now. I'll wait 3 months. I'll wait 6 months. I'll wait and see what happens. And then you just you know, that's where you then start to get a downturn right there, because people just hold off. So I think we need, you know, this is why it's good to hear David is we're ahead of the game with Gloucester. We're trying to get, this is coming down the line in a couple of years. Let's get ahead of the game. Business owners just want some kind of idea of what the plans are for the next 5 years, so they can work around them and with them. And when the policies are changing at the drop of a hat, just becomes very difficult. And as I say, people just stop investing then. But there's lots and lots of good businesses out there. There's lots of positivity, I think. And I sit there and think, well, we keep talking about this downturn, and there is a cost of living crisis without any doubt. But then, you know, talking to business owners that are just really, really busy, and there's lots and lots of work coming in. And you know, most businesses that I'm working with are saying, well, we just can't cope with the work that we've got. We need more people. We need more people. So I think I'm kind of sat there thinking, is it ever going to happen? Then you see the numbers today. Actually, yes, economy was down a bit in September, but not as much as was expected. So I take that as a positive.
I think that's dead right. Thanks ever so much for that, Will. And Angharad, let's bring you in now. Let's talk about Hot Tub Rocks, based out there in Lydney. How long has the business been going?
It's been going about 8 years, but more like 4 in its current guise. It started off as just a hire business, so just hiring out hot tubs, which was a bit of a kind of almost a bit of a hobby, really. I had a full-time job as a civil engineer, so I was looking for something slightly more entertaining than technical drawings of wind turbines. So hot tubs seemed to be it. Yeah.
And during lockdown, you did extremely well, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we were obviously one of the industries that was hit in a very, very positive way because of COVID. You know, there was growth beyond growth, you know, so we can't complain. But you will have all probably noticed there's quite a bit of media around about the death of the hot tub. So that's really nice as a hot tub business. And there's definitely been a downturn. You know, it's a bit of a post-COVID thing, a seasonal slump as well, because there's a sort of a thing in the UK, I think, about, you know, if it's not very nice with the weather, then people don't go out and use things in their garden. So instead of embracing the cold and the miserableness and sitting in, you know, steamy loveliness, people tend to really be buying them and hiring them in spring and summer. So we have a traditional slump this time of year anyway. And yes, that's our lovely website there. Thank you, Mark.
No, it's funny because a friend of mine, they've got a hot tub, and I say to them, because they invite us over, say, what do you do in your hot tub? And they said, we argue.
Okay.
Which is quite funny. But
I
no,
won't use that as a marketing.
Don't use that as a strapline. No, it won't work. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the market, you are right. We have Punchline's written stories about the downturn in hot tub sales, but you've moved into other things as well, haven't you? Do you want to explain?
Yeah. So we've always been aware that we don't want to have all of our eggs in a hot tub shaped basket. You know, we need to be more than one particular product. So we've always done like outdoor furniture and big fancy electric pergolas and stuff like that to enhance the whole outdoor living. But because our brand and our name, you know, is Hot Tubs Rock, people don't necessarily come to us looking for that. So the people who buy hot tubs buy it, which is fabulous. But we've been thinking for a while now, we need to do something about that. And it seemed to make sense. If we're going to have a bit of a rebrand, then we should do some interior stuff as well. So on the 3rd of December, we're launching an interiors department in our showroom where people will be able to come and get fabulous tables and chairs and lamps and gifts. So hopefully, you know, on a business level, it'll mean people have a reason to shop with us all year rather than in the perceived, you know, seasons of hot tubs and outside stuff.
Well, thank you ever so much for that. I look forward to popping over there and finding all about it. Thanks ever so much for that.
You'd be very welcome.
I'm going over to Colin now. So Colin, great to see you again. I was at your office the other day, actually. We've taken some photographs because you're celebrating 10 years in business, mate. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers, Mark. 10 years.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the business? How many people you employ and how many people you train and all that?
Well, I just want to clarify something. A lot of people get mixed up between Tidal Training Limited and Tidal Training Direct Limited. You know, the lovely Claire, the director of Tidal Training Direct and founder of Public House, she was on with you a few weeks ago, Mark. And they specifically do first aid training. They've got a team of paramedics. Claire refers to Tidal Training Limited as the mothership. We've been going 10 years now. And, you know, I'm proud to say that we're one of the largest bespoke mental or healthcare training organisations in the UK. We provide training in a number of different areas. So learning disabilities, mental health, the mental health arena, medical and clinical. Mark, the other day, you came in the office, we got out one of the venipuncture arms and he said, show me how you take blood, Col. Health and social care.
I just want to say, by the way, I used the rubber arm. I didn't use Col's arm to try and take blood.
Yeah, use the rubber arm. And we provide training for organisations that support children as well. So, you know, we've got about 7 people in the office now, in head office. 10 years ago, it was me at home on the sofa. We've got, last count yesterday was 27 associate trainers around the country. So they range from psychologists, psychotherapists, mental health nurses, paramedics, ex-police, ex-prison service, RGNs, and social workers as well. So that allows us to provide a wide variety of courses across a lot of different sectors. And a lot of the trainers specialise in particular areas, but there's a lot of crossover as well. So last year, we trained just over 17,000 individuals, whether it be on live interactive webinars or face-to-face. The year before, when the pandemic hit, we actually trained just over, I think it was 16,000. So we haven't actually slowed down. We've sped up and we're growing as well. So, you know, we've got some lovely offices next to Evans Jones in Cheltenham. They're our lovely neighbours. And I'm just proud of my team. I'm proud of all the staff. I'm proud of everyone who's around me. You know, you need positive people in your life when the chips are down. You need people to pick you up and push you forward. And I'm fortunate that I've got positive people around me. So here's to the next 10 years. And yeah, thanks, Mark.
All right, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks ever so much. And I interviewed Colin very recently, by the way, as a big interview. Fascinating background in his life as well in the army. So that's all included in that interview. Thanks ever so much. Okay, let's round up, please, guys. We're running very, very short of time. So what have we picked out for this week's Punchline? Start with you, David. What's the story that caught your eye, please?
The one that caught my eye, and I heard a little bit of this on the radio, is those cuts to BBC local radio. And I heard Mark Cummings talking to one of the head honchos from BBC Central, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, we've seen over the last decade, largely local media disappearing, as in the newspapers, you know, moving to once a week, moving to web presence with really annoying pop-up ads all the time. So quite difficult to interact with, I find. Maybe that's just me. But the news that, you know, local radio is going from where it is at the moment to, I think, only 2 presenters would be employed in Radio Gloucestershire, and they'd only be live on air for Gloucestershire from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. Monday to Friday. Everything outside of that would be regional provision. I think if you think back over the last 15 years, what we've seen from Radio Gloucestershire, and I'm sure other local radio stations as well, right back to 2007 when we had the floods, they were absolutely, they were that fourth emergency service, if you like, letting people know what's going on. When we get snow, when we get school closures, when we get any kind of challenge or problem in the county, they're there and have been there for not quite 24/7, because overnight is regional stuff, but it's a real shame if those proposals go through and we lose local radio. Because much of the commercial local radio has disappeared over the last few years as well.
I just want to add to that as well, David. There's a serious problem with democracy, because BBC Radio Gloucestershire aren't afraid to ask those difficult questions on the police, the NHS, you know, our civic leaders. It's difficult. It's difficult to do that. You're not. What actually happens, you don't mind me saying, is you get blanked. You suddenly don't get invited to meet the minister. You don't get invited to other things. You don't get the press releases. We've had that on Punchline before, where we've been blackballed by people just because we ask those difficult questions. And the BBC don't care, because they're not answerable to anybody like that. That's the beauty of them, really. And Mark Cummings has done a fantastic job over the years of really, really playing hardball with some of these politicians. So fair play. I totally agree with you, David. Let's go over to you, Will. Will, what have you picked out in this week's Punchline? I'm sorry.
Well, I saw a headline in Punchline, £10 million house for sale in Stroud. And my first thought was, is Mark selling up? Is he going to the south of France? Is this the end of Punchline? What's going on, Mark? Why didn't you tell me you were selling up, moving?
It's only the West Wing, that one's mate. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And Harry, what have you picked out from this week's Punchline, please?
Just the investment in the new restaurant in Cheltenham. Everybody loves a rooftop restaurant, and really nice to see some money coming into the economy. I don't think Cheltenham gets affected quite as much as the Forest of Dean does. I don't think anybody's going to see a £1.5 million restaurant opening on a roof in Lydney. However, it's great to see it in Cheltenham, and yeah, go new exciting business, yay.
But you have got that fantastic new cafe down the Lydney Harbour. Which
an amazing cheese toasted sandwich,
and the best fish and chip shop in the county, by the way, on the high street in Lydney as well. One of my favourites. I just want to say that, because I've been to every single fish and chip shop in the county, but that's not a big surprise today. Carl, what have you picked out this week's Punchline, please?
A story by Sarah Wood, calls for hospital parking fees to be scrapped. What do you do? What do you do? Do you scrap them? I mean, it does generate vital funds. I know that just through reading this, that throughout the pandemic, they actually stopped fees for staff. And now if you work after 7:30 at night, you don't have to pay for parking. But when you come on a day shift, you do have to pay for parking. So I don't know what they're going to do there. I know, the state of things at the moment, and people haven't got a lot of money. And when you're going to see maybe one of your loved ones in hospital, should you have to pay for the privilege? I don't know, but something has to be done to ease the financial burden on staff and patients' families as well.
And it's not that easy to get a bus there, I tell you.
No.
Thanks ever so much for that, guys. Thanks ever so much for joining my fantastic panel today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Hazelwood's Business Advisors, and excellent, lovely people for their help. And thank you again, everybody, for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you again next week. Cheers, bye.